Okay, there will be more after. So you don't need to finish everything now. We are serving more after, and I think even more delicious than the first batch. Okay, so
Thank you. Thank you.
which brings us to our next segment, free thought and politics. Now, we all know how free thought influences our government, which is, it doesn't. And this is the case in point. Okay, and to tell us more about this and what we can do about it is Dr. Sylvia Estrada-Claudio.
Thank you. Will I speak in English for the Tagalog challenge? Patawad na lang din sa mga mas gusto sanang Tagalog. Pero, talking about age, diba? Parang I feel like I'm the youngest here because I only joined up last month or something. Also, I feel like, although I'm a lifelong agnostic, I want to ask a question that's been intriguing me all my life. Are my sister and I the only Filipinos who actually were born to two agnostic parents that had absolutely no religious influence growing up? No? No one else? Finally! See, and so like I'm a kid in a candy shop because I feel like it's coming home. There's so many things I want to say, but I got assigned 10 minutes for a very important topic. So true indeed that if you're advocating for the reproductive health bill and other scientific medical things, you have to do a lot of combating unscientific thinking from the oppositors of the bill. And some of it is just plain lying, like condoms do not protect against HIV/AIDS. I mean, this is a real lie. And it's talking about life. It's a lie that kills people if people don't use HIV/AIDS and condoms. Amazing thing as well is that the only thing that condoms don't protect against is see, the kid in the candy shop. Warts, certain kind of warts, for which we have a vaccine that the Catholic Church also doesn't like. Okay, so maybe they're opposing it because then they can't say this lie about condoms. Okay, but some of the stuff is a little bit more sophisticated than outright lies. For example, when they consistently cite from the package of the contraceptives what the side effects are as a way of opposing the contraceptives. And in one of the Congress hearings, I think I got invited to make chismis. In one of the congressional hearings, or the Senate hearings I was at, I had to hold up this whole book that lists all the pharmaceutical products. And I say, all of them have side effects. If we're not going to use things because of side effects, you might as well throw out the aspirin, throw out the penicillin, throw out. So it's also that kind of crazy scientific non-thinking that's going on. They also tend to say that it's been proven by embryological science that life begins at conception. Challenging this, they come up with several studies, some of them in really old books that have like 1950-something or 1960-something. And it's funny because those books have been superseded by later editions that drop that nonsense. Or they come up with the real fringe scientists' project. And it's very difficult to explain both to policymakers and to, how am I doing? Anyway, I forgot to find myself. Very difficult to explain both to policymakers and to the lay people, ordinary people who you have to convince to support this bill, how to think scientifically. No? Kasi you have to tell them about the scientific process. That there are always going to be that errant, extant study that will prove some other point or contradict. But you have to look at the whole body of science. Or, when you're looking at scientific literature, I think you prefer the word of the World Health Organization rather than the Christian psychiatrists of New York. Okay, so it's a bit, a lot of it is really working to scientifically talk to policymakers and also the kind of grassroots advocacy we do have with women. The interesting thing is the reproductive health bill, and this is one of the many things in the candy shop that I want to talk about sitting there, and also because I like to eat in the candy shop. We talked about how people in the grassroots can be made to be free thinkers, but I think I would agree with the previous speaker that perhaps we should look more deeply and investigate more, because remember when the bishops said they weren't going to give communion to people who were for the bill, or especially for the proponents of the bill. So the poor women in the communities we work with, and there are 5 large communities here in Metro Manila. It's not a small group of women and families. So some of them said, di naman kami nagsisimba kasi wala na kaming oras. Okay? So bakit? Problema ba namin yon? Hindi na kami nakakapunta sa simbahan. So the assumption of the church that we are majority Catholics, this is not something we should just accept. There is always that nominal I'm a Catholic, but and a lot of the people will come and tell you sorts of different things. I also recall the reactions of my gay friends who are typical parlorista. Now, let's not get into gay studies and talk about the role of the typical parlorista in gay advocacy. That's for another meeting, right? I have some typical parlorista gay friends because I do work very much with grassroots communities. At ang reaksyon nila sige, kung ayaw nila akong mangumunyon, di ko sila papapasukin sa parlor ko. So you do get a lot of these very interesting ideas that are coming out, and I think the church is losing a lot of soft power. The other issue though is when you're working with policymakers, because they may not be particularly religious, although many are, like Representative Goles, whose he was citing statistics in his interpellation of the bill recently, and the government agencies whose statistics he was citing up and said, those are not our statistics. So forced to good, he brings out this book by Social Watch, another progressive NGO, who up and says he misinterpreted. Those interpretations are his. And I'm like, I also teach in UP, and I'm like wondering if an ordinary UP instructor actually had someone say of his scholarship that he had misquoted or miscited statistics, that instructor would be out on his ear in the university, right? But instead we have elected idiots like him to represent the interests of the Filipino people. Another story, since you seem to be very amused, was when we had to go into discussion as exactly what abortifacients are. In the health committee, that was before, you have to go through the health committee before the bill passes out of committee to the plenary. We've been fighting for this bill for 7 years. It could go on. Anyway, so we're sitting there as resource persons. And of course, the Congress people don't really listen to their resource persons. They're just pretending it's a public hearing so they can pretend. But they like it when it's a controversial bill because the media's there and a lot of people are there. So they need to grab all this time for themselves to talk. And that's how you come out. See how stupid they are. Because they start debating about what exactly an abortifacient is, right? And one of the brilliant Congress people say, you know what? I couldn't find it in my pocket dictionary, abortifacient. I'm like, and you're like trying, I have a definition. And then somebody else brings out this whole volume and says, no, You can't just look it up in the Casio electronic dictionary. I had my staff run up, and we have Webster's dictionary, the true dictionary of the King's English. I am quoting. Okay.